Everyone, RemanX here, and we're on day 2 of the Doom raids. We're doing 2.2 difficulty, and I want to unpack some information and share some of my learnings with you guys as soon as possible. So realistically, you can see that my mutant roster is pretty large, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think is the best team to utilize through the mutant nodes, why I think it's the best team. We're going to talk about the T4s, the abilities, what I've leveled them up to. Now, 2.2 isn't 2.3, and I think there's probably some like niche teams that you can probably build that you could potentially bring in to advance through a node or two. That being said, I think there's an overarching team that you should be focusing on, as it hasn't changed much from what we finalized in 1.1. And so what we're going to talk about here is the ICEMAN. And so the ICEMAN is all 5 of them currently, and they all do their job. And so I think this is the best mutant raid team and potentially worthwhile to level up in all game modes. I'm using them in war. I'm using them in war offense. I'm using them in raid specifically for the mutant node, and I just don't see another team out there that can perform this way reliably. And so we're going to talk about the fact that I did a 2.2 and I don't have the whole team at ISO 3. I didn't bring them all up to 85, although I probably will. I did focus on Jubilee and Beast, even though Beast got deleted on occasion just from a single targeting error. You know, that RNG chance to target support that we get inside the raids, deleted him outright. Still was able to accomplish the task of finishing the raid node because this team functions on a high level. So right off the bat, I bet you guys are like, no, Rem, those aren't the ISOs that I was told. And I'm sorry, but these are kind of what I've been leading into for a few months and the reason why we haven't seen the ISO list updated. And we're going to talk about why these ISOs and why I think it's so important that we talk about how this team functions at the end game. So first things first, Bishop is a striker because he is the powerhouse damage. And the biggest reason why he's a striker is on attack, he's going to get a significant amount of speed up. So he's going to be triple tapping, double tapping, tap-toeing his way into the raid success as the damage of your character, of your team. Now, to be very clear, I brought him up to 7 red star because I knew this early on. It wasn't a surprise to me that he is a treasure and should be rewarded as such. So I invested gold. He's someone who gets a lot of return on that. That being said, again, if you're not projecting trying to do 2.2 and 2.3, don't have to farm him all the way up right now. But that's going to talk about it. You can see all of his T4s are substantially beneficial because of the fact that he is doing so much damage. And the same thing we're going to talk about Jubilee. Now you're going to notice I don't have her 85 yet. That's because I've got her at 6 red star. Had I not, I would probably bring her up. But the first thing you're going to see is all of these ISOs that are skirmisher. And there's a few reasons. First, and the most important thing that you have, and we've all taken for granted, they have to land debuffs, and their debuffs are significant. If you don't land ICEMAN's slows, he doesn't reduce the damage of the opposing team enough. And that's the idea. This is T4 is non-negotiable. All right? Him as a skirmisher is non-negotiable. He has to land these debuffs. So even if we take a look at his stats, we're looking at, 13k focus. If my head is in the way, I'll move my head for a second. No, 13k focus. You can see that that's the big difference maker because the raid difficulty slider, and we projected this early on, if they ever did a 5-point slider for a raid, we were going to have different resistances become part of that component. And so skirmisher becomes a lot more important. So his slows are impactful. His slows reduce the enemy damage. It's a big deal. And so a lot of people probably, we're going to talk about Beast, and people are like, well, Beast heals. Sure he does. That isn't his primary function though, because realistically, he's also an enhancer support. And so he kind of functions in a similar way to Nick Fury, in that while he can heal and does heal quite well, that isn't his primary function. And the way you can kind of look at that is, even though he's still a powerhouse in health, He is an enhancer support. And so the idea behind that is one of his most important abilities is the ability to flip buffs into debuffs. I can't tell you how much I'm using that right now in the raids. There are plenty of characters that have defense up. There are plenty of characters that have immunity that he is flipping into something else, and they get flipped off, and you're able to take them down quickly. I'm not saying that, you know, in 2.3 we won't see bleeds that are significant because of the fact we already know that the dad bros are the kryptonite for this team. If they get spun up before your Axeman gets spun up, but the good news is you've got a multiple man to get through there. And so the last piece of this puzzle is gonna be Kitty Pryde. And when I say last piece of this puzzle, is the reason why she's a skirmisher is because she has to land offense down. The two-turn offense down, and more importantly, the immunities come in, or not the immunities, the disrupt come in absolutely handy and are vital as you progress through the nodes. More importantly, on these raid nodes, we're seeing characters that can taunt, and we have a hard time getting around them if they do get certain buffs up. So she is vital in that category. She is relatively low cooldown, and the fact is, if Beast dies, she is a healer in that the fact that when an Astonishing X-Men evades, they're going to get that additional heal. So she's probably going to be on the team for a long term until potentially Omega Red. But then again, especially on the second node of the mutant tier in 2.0 series, you know, she's going to get spun up, whereas Omega Red won't. So Omega Red might be a filler for the boss. Same thing. People are like, what about the dad bros? Sorry, guys. Dad bros are schmoes, and they're eating at Joe's. Leave them back in 1.1. Sorry, it's over. Their time was, we projected that they wouldn't be able to move on to this next level without a fifth member. And so that fifth member could easily swing them in their favor. But right now, this is the best they have and what I recommend bringing into the end game here. So when it comes down to this last piece of the puzzle, this is where and I'm going to say this out loud, where I think that your experience in 2.0 won't be what you see in 2.2. And the reason being is she's a skirmisher because I need her to land that blind. Her blind is essential to prevent things like Shatterstar from spinning up the dad bros. Her blind is essential from preventing a offensed up bishop from nuking your entire squad. And the only way to guarantee from that and landing is not having her as a striker and having her get resisted twice, is making her irresistible by making her a skirmisher. And so realistically, you could see these stats. I'm going to move my head again. And so 14k focus. Is she worth a 6 red star? I don't know. But I have a feeling we're going to see the difference between you successfully doing 2.2 and 2.3 are how many times those blinds get resisted. And so the assists are a little bit random. You can't control who's assisting, but you have to be aware of who's assisting as you're doing these raids. So make sure you guys understand the little arrow up for the assist now. When you see Jubilee have that, you want to make sure it's a significant character to apply the blind debuff to. And so these are the mutant nodes. They're the most confident I am in the raid for making a recommendation. And stay tuned because we're going to have videos highlighting all of these going forward. I'm going to probably break down some strats for each node and bring them to you as we progress through 2.2 and 2.3. Now, I can bring these characters up and max them out, but I'm trying to gradually bring them up. I will say at 2.2, 85, they didn't feel perfect. They felt like they were definitely pushing the limits of what this team can do in the raid. And I expect 2.3 to be a bit of a heal fest for those attempting to do it. I think even the top alliance in the game will struggle, and they're lucky there's a core event to get through it. But stay tuned. I'm sure we'll see if they can complete that this week. All right. Remember, I do things so you don't have to. And I took a hard line in the sand for a long time about this team. And I think I've locked in my ISOs, my T4s, and they stood the test of time. I'm sorry if you guys used other T4s and other ISOs, but this team has been worth the investment 100%. And I do project that Jubilee will probably pair with Omega Red instead of Phoenix for a legendary DD5 if that's how they break it down this time. You can see the only ones I haven't done here are the basic and the basic and the passive, only because I don't need the resistance, but I might down the road. 10% isn't a big number. And then obviously the more I can do on Bobby, the better off he is. And like I said, because he's applying the 2 turns of slow with this, and then the absolute max with the passive, these are non-negotiable. And then obviously the bonus barrier is a big deal as you move forward. And so same thing with Kitty. I do think that her passive and her special, because of the 2 turns of offense down, are important. So these are the T4s I put in them. These are the ISOs I currently have them at. I will probably make them ISO level 3 to make sure Bishop does a little bit more damage and we can apply longer vulnerables. But stay tuned for the next series where we go through the other characters I've used in the raids.